Donald Trump stood in the middle of a drought-stricken field, his signature red tie a stark contrast against the dusty brown earth. He turned to the camera, his face uncharacteristically somber. "This is the reality for many of our farmers," he said, gesturing to the barren land. "But today, we're going to change one family's story." What unfolded next was a series of events that no one saw coming. Not the farmer, not the local community, and certainly not the media. Are you ready to witness a side of Trump that might just change your perspective? John's weathered hands gripped the steering wheel as he drove past his ruined fields. The sight of flattened crops and waterlogged soil made his stomach churn. For generations, the Miller farm had stood strong against nature's challenges. But this year was different. The storms came early and stayed late, unleashing a relentless assault on everything John and his ancestors had built. As he pulled up to the farmhouse, John surveyed the damage. Crops that should have been reaching for the sky lay broken and muddy. The rich topsoil that had nurtured countless harvests was washed away, leaving behind a barren landscape. John's chest tightened as he thought about the consequences of this disaster. Inside the house, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken worry. The bank's latest letter sat unopened on the kitchen table, a ticking time bomb threatening to shatter their lives. John's wife, Sarah, busied herself with dinner preparations, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. Their children, Emma and Jack, whispered questions to each other when they thought no one was listening, their young minds grappling with the uncertainty that clouded their future. As night fell, John found himself in the barn, seeking solace in the familiar sense of hay and leather. He sat on an old crate, his father's worn ledger open before him. The pages were filled with neat rows of figures, a meticulous record of triumphs and setbacks stretching back decades. John's fingers traced the entries, feeling the weight of his family's legacy pressing down on him. With a heavy sigh, John began to crunch the numbers. He tallied up the damage from the storms, factored in the lost crops, and compared it all against their dwindling savings and mounting debts. The results were grim. Without a substantial influx of cash or a dramatic turnaround in their fortunes, the farm would be gone in a matter of months. He closed the ledger, his mind racing with possibilities. Could they take out another loan? Sell off some equipment? John knew the answers before he even finished the questions. They were already leveraged to the hilt, and selling assets would only buy them a little more time while crippling their ability to work the land. As John sat in the darkening barn, he was unaware that miles away, an unlikely savior was about to enter the story. In a luxurious office in New York City, Donald Trump sat behind his desk, reviewing a stack of reports. Among them was a brief about the devastating impact of recent storms on small farms in the Midwest. Something about the story caught Trump's attention, stirring a memory of his own grandfather's struggles as an immigrant farmer. Trump leaned back in his chair, lost in thought. He had built his reputation on big deals and flashy projects, but there was something about the plight of these hardworking farmers that resonated with him. It reminded him of the values his father had instilled in him, the importance of hard work, perseverance, and helping others when you had the means to do so. With a sudden decision, Trump reached for his phone. He had an idea, one that could change everything for a family like John's. As he dialed, Trump felt a sense of purpose that went beyond business deals and political maneuvering. This was about making a real difference in someone's life, about using his resources to lift up those who had been knocked down by circumstances beyond their control. Back at the Miller farm, John finally left the barn and walked slowly towards the house. The weight of the farm's uncertain future pressed down on his shoulders. As he approached the porch, he paused, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. The stars twinkled overhead, indifferent to the turmoil below. In a bustling New York office, a young aide named Sarah rushed through the corridors, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors. She clutched a stack of papers, her eyes darting from door to door as she navigated the maze-like hallways. As she hurried, one article caught her eye, its headline stark against the white paper: "Midwest Farms Face Unprecedented Crisis." Sarah's pace slowed as she skimmed the article, her heart sinking. The story of a struggling farm family in the heartland struck a chord, reminding her of her grandparents' tireless work on their small Iowa farm. Before she knew it, Sarah stood outside an imposing oak door. The golden nameplate gleamed, Donald J. Trump. She hesitated, hearing the muffled sounds of a meeting inside. Trump was discussing his latest business venture with executives, their voices a low hum of excitement and strategy. Sarah took a deep breath and knocked. The voices fell silent. "Come in," a familiar voice called out. She stepped into the room, feeling all eyes upon her. Trump sat at the head of a long table, his expression curious and mildly annoyed at the interruption. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Trump," Sarah began softly, approaching with the article, "but I thought you should see this right away." Trump's eyebrows furrowed as he read, the room silent except for the rustle of paper. Sarah watched his expression change, the lines on his face deepening. As Trump read, memories of his grandfather, Friedrich Trump, surfaced. The story echoed his own family's struggles, resonating deeply within him. Trump looked up, his eyes distant. "Thank you," he said softly to Sarah. Then, turning to the executives, he spoke with newfound resolve. "Gentlemen, we'll have to continue this another time. Something's come up." The room emptied, leaving Trump alone with the farmer's story. He leaned back, absorbing the weight of families on the brink of losing everything. After a moment of silence, Trump reached for the phone. "Get me everything on these Midwest farms," he said. "I want to know which families are hit hardest, what help they need, and what we can do." As he hung up, Trump felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. This was about hardworking Americans needing help. He thought of John, the farmer from the article, imagining the weight on his shoulders. Trump's mind raced with ideas for long-term solutions. New farming techniques, crop diversification, modernizing equipment. He considered experts who could offer guidance and support. His office became a hive of activity. Advisors came and went, bringing information and suggestions. Maps and reports covered his desk. Trump pored over every detail, determined to understand the full scope of the problem and find a way to help these struggling farmers. The old rotary phone on John's kitchen wall jangled to life, its shrill ring cutting through the heavy silence of the farmhouse. John glanced up from the pile of bills spread across the table, his weathered hands pausing mid-calculation. With a weary sigh, he pushed himself up and shuffled across the worn linoleum. As he reached for the receiver, a flicker of hope stirred in his chest. "Hello?" John's voice was gruff, guarded. "Is this John Miller?" The voice on the other end was crisp, authoritative, and strangely familiar. John's brow furrowed. "Yes, this is John. Who's calling?" There was a brief pause, then, "This is Donald Trump. I want to help you save your farm." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. John's grip on the phone tightened, his knuckles turning white. He sank into a nearby chair, the old wood groaning under his weight. "I'm sorry. Who did you say this was?" "Donald Trump," the voice repeated. "I know this must come as a shock, Mr. Miller, but I assure you this is not a prank call. I recently came across an article about the challenges facing farmers in your region. Your story caught my attention." John listened in stunned silence as Trump explained how he'd learned about the situation. The man spoke of storm damage, crop failures, and mounting debts with a level of understanding that surprised John. "Mr. Miller, I want to offer you a lifeline," Trump said, his tone softening. "I have a plan that could help you not just save your farm, but transform it." Hope, that fragile ember John had thought long extinguished, flickered to life in his chest. He leaned forward, hanging on every word as Trump outlined his proposal. "First, we'll provide immediate financial assistance to address your most pressing debts," Trump explained. "This isn't a loan, Mr. Miller. It's an investment in your future and the future of American agriculture." John's breath caught in his throat. The weight of unpaid bills and looming foreclosure had been crushing him for months. The thought of that burden lifting was almost too much to comprehend. Trump continued. "Next, we'll bring in a team of agricultural experts. They'll work with you to implement new farming techniques, explore crop diversification, and modernize your equipment." As Trump spoke, John's mind raced with possibilities. He thought of the experimental drought-resistant seeds he'd read about, but you'd never afford to try. He imagined fields of diverse crops, no longer at the mercy of a single market's fluctuations. "Finally, Mr. Miller, we want to help you become a beacon of innovation for your community," Trump said. "Your farm can serve as a model for sustainable, resilient agriculture in the face of changing climates and markets." John's eyes stung with unshed tears. For so long he'd felt like a failure, watching helplessly as generations of hard work and tradition slipped through his fingers. Now here was a chance not just to survive, but to lead the way forward. "Why?" John finally managed to ask, his voice thick with emotion. "Why would you do this for me?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Trump spoke again, his voice carried a note of reflection. My grandfather was an immigrant farmer, Mr. Miller. He faced countless hardships building a new life in this country. Your story resonates with me. It's a part of the American dream that's worth fighting for. As the conversation drew to a close, John felt as if he were waking from a dream. But the hope burning in his chest, the excitement coursing through his veins, these were real. News of Trump's offer spread through the Miller household like wildfire. John gathered his family in the living room, recounting the unexpected phone call with trembling excitement. Sarah's eyes shone with cautious optimism as he explained the details. The children listened wide-eyed, sensing the shift in their parents' demeanor. As reality set in, John faced an unexpected dilemma. Their community was deeply divided politically, and Trump was a polarizing figure. John realized that accepting help from such a controversial source could have far-reaching consequences beyond saving the farm. That night, after the children were asleep, John and Sarah sat at the kitchen table. "I don't know, Sarah," John said, running a hand through his hair. "What will people think? We could become outcasts in our own town." Sarah took his hand. "John, we're talking about our home, our legacy. Are we really going to let other people's opinions dictate our future?" John wrestled with the potential backlash, spending sleepless nights pacing the farmhouse. The thought of losing everything was agonizing, but the fear of judgment weighed heavily. One evening, John overheard his children talking about possibly moving. Their innocent conversation struck him to his core. He realized his children's future hung in the balance, and his pride was standing in the way. Sarah remained a constant source of strength. One night, she reminded him of the drought of '88 and how the community came together. "Maybe this is our chance to show our kids what real strength looks like. It's not about where help comes from. It's about having the courage to accept it when you need it most." Her words resonated deeply. John thought about his ancestors who had made difficult, unpopular decisions to keep the farm alive. John stood at the window, gazing at the land. The weight of his decision pressed down on him, but he felt a flicker of hope. He closed his eyes, taking in the memories of his family's struggles and triumphs. As dawn broke, John made his decision, choosing his family's future over fear of judgment. With trembling hands, he dialed Trump's number. Each ring seemed to last an eternity. "Mr. Trump's office, how may I assist you?" John's voice was steadier than expected. "This is John Miller. I'd like to speak with Mr. Trump about his offer to help our farm." As he waited, John felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face the challenges. For the first time in months, hope blossomed in his chest, as vibrant as the first green shoots of spring. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the Miller farm. John stood on his porch, coffee in hand, marveling at the transformation before him. Just months ago, this land had been a symbol of despair. Now it buzzed with life and promise. The arrival of Trump's team of agricultural experts had marked the beginning of a whirlwind of activity. They descended upon the farm, each bringing new ideas and technologies that John had only dreamed of implementing. At first, the sheer volume of information overwhelmed him, but as the days passed, John found himself absorbed in a world of possibilities he never knew existed. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, the Miller farm began to take on a new identity. Drought-resistant crops now stood where withered stalks once drooped, their leaves a vibrant green that seemed to defy the memory of past struggles. An innovative irrigation system hummed quietly, delivering precise amounts of water to each plant. The transformation wasn't just physical, there was a shift in the air, a palpable sense of hope that radiated from the Miller family. John threw himself into the work with renewed vigor. His hands, once calloused from worry, now bore the marks of hope and hard work. Sarah found a new sense of purpose, managing the books with meticulous care. Her background in accounting proved invaluable as she created spreadsheets and projections, mapping out their financial future with newfound clarity. Even Emily and Jake eagerly pitched in. Emily helped set up the new computer systems that monitored soil moisture and crop health. Jake assisted John in the fields, soaking up knowledge about sustainable farming practices like a sponge. As word spread about the changes happening at the Miller farm, the community watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Some neighbors, remembering the drought of '88 and the spirit of unity it had fostered, offered their support. Others kept their distance, driving by slowly with faces etched in uncertainty. In a town deeply divided by politics, accepting help from Donald Trump was a bold move, but John refused to let their doubts deter him. Gradually, even those who had been skeptical began to take notice. Farmers from neighboring counties started to visit, curious about the new methods being employed. John welcomed them with open arms, sharing what he had learned. As spring arrived in full force, the Miller farm stood as a testament to resilience and innovation. The fields were a sea of green, promising a harvest that had seemed impossible just months before. The old barn, once a symbol of fading glory, now housed state-of-the-art equipment that blinked and whirred with efficiency. John's shoulders, once hunched with the weight of impending failure, now stood straight and proud. Sarah's smile, which had become a rare sight, now appeared easily and often. The Miller family had not just saved their farm, they had breathed new life into it, transforming it into a beacon of hope for their community and beyond. The transformation of the Miller farm sent ripples through the community, stirring a change as palpable as the fresh breeze that now swept across their flourishing fields. Initially met with skepticism, the farm's success soon drew curious neighbors and farmers from neighboring counties. Their dusty trucks lined the newly graveled driveway as they came to witness the green oasis that stood in stark contrast to the struggling farms around it. John Miller, once a solitary figure battling against the odds, now found himself at the center of attention. On a warm Tuesday afternoon, he led a group of local farmers through rows of thriving corn. "It's not just about the new irrigation system," he explained, his voice carrying a note of wonder. "It's about reimagining what's possible on our land." Bill Hawkins, a farmer with 40 years of experience, shook his head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like this," he admitted, his voice a mix of awe and lingering doubt. The local agricultural college reached out, eager to document the Miller farm's journey. Professor Linda Martinez arrived with a team of students, their cameras capturing every detail of the farm's transformation. "What we're seeing here is more than just a successful farm. It's a blueprint for the future of agriculture in our region," she explained, lending academic credibility to John's methods. As word spread, media attention followed. John found himself thrust into the spotlight, a role he used to address broader issues facing American farmers. "This isn't about one farm or one act of kindness," he insisted during a primetime interview. "It's about the challenges all farmers are facing and the need for sustainable solutions." The unexpected alliance between a struggling farmer and a controversial public figure sparked debates about celebrity philanthropy and the future of American agriculture. Amidst the discussions, John remained focused on practical lessons learned. He used his platform to advocate for sustainable farming practices, emphasizing innovation in the face of changing climate patterns and economic pressures. At a local town hall meeting, John stood before his neighbors, many of whom had once viewed his acceptance of help with suspicion. "What happened here isn't just about saving one farm," he said, his voice steady with conviction. "It's about preserving a way of life and adapting it for the future." The Miller farm became a symbol of hope for struggling rural communities across America. Farmers facing similar challenges saw in John's story a path forward, a way to blend tradition with innovation. As summer turned to fall, the farm hosted its first Harvest Festival. The event drew visitors from across the state, transforming their once quiet fields into a bustling celebration of rural life. Children laughed as they navigated a corn maze, while adults sampled dishes made from the farm's produce. Sarah Miller, watching the joyful scene from the porch of their farmhouse, turned to her husband. "Did you ever imagine this when you made that call?" she asked, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. John shook his head, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Not in my wildest dreams," he admitted. "But now I can't imagine it any other way." John Miller's journey from despair to hope blossomed like a field after a harsh winter, reminding us that kindness can thrive in unexpected places. His story challenges us to see the humanity in others, even those with different political views. The transformation of the Miller farm revealed the power of compassion and the resilience of the human spirit. As we reflect on John's experience, we're prompted to consider our own potential for kindness. What small gesture could we make today that might change someone's life? Perhaps it's offering a helping hand to a struggling neighbor or reaching out to someone we've lost touch with. In a world often divided, John's story reminds us that our shared humanity transcends any divide.